So welcome morning, everybody. Monday morning, last day of November 2020, believe it or not. Not too sure what happened to 2020. I think it disappeared in a blur. So this morning we're talking about difference making. Can you make a difference? Are you a difference maker? Have you made a difference? And if you have, yeah, let's just talk about it and find out. I think Ed, you kicked us off with your start of your story on Friday. So maybe you'd like to start for us and just walk us through that, and maybe if there's anything else you'd like to add on to it.
Yeah, it was Trevor's remark about difference makers that made me think about an email that had come in the day before. And I'll just read you out the email I sent and the response I got. And I emailed, and I was fortunate because I wanted to get in touch with the government, and I knew someone that knew someone that knew someone. So it got up the chain of command. So the email says, currently Pirate FM, that's a local radio station, are running a government advertisement about the ending of the transition period following the UK leaving the EU. And I assume it's an advert that's running on all commercial radio stations. The ad says it applies to all businesses, including one-man bands. It's over 20 years since the UNESCO guidelines on gender-neutral language were published. In the introduction, it says that language does not merely reflect the way we think, it also shapes our thinking. If words and expressions that imply women are inferior to men are constantly used, the assumption of inferiority tends to become part of our mindset. Hence the need to adjust our language when our ideas evolve. Language is a powerful tool. Poets and propagandists know this, as indeed do victims of discrimination. That a government department use a term like one-man band to describe sole trader businesses is at best reprehensible. And I got this reply back saying, this is to my colleague, dear Miss van der Meulen, thank you for bringing Mr. Chapman's complaint to our attention. As a direct result, we've instructed our media buying agency to remove the radio ad in question from all current national radio campaigns and with immediate effect. And we will take very special care to use gender neutral language in all future campaigns. And I thought, wow, I could have just sat there and fumed, because I strongly believe that the language we use does influence things. And it might seem strange just to moan about the term one-man band, but there are not that many women running their own businesses. And we in the Federation of Small Businesses are trying to encourage more women. So I thought I will do something. And that email came from the transition campaign and marketing lead from the Prime Minister's office. So I thought, wow, that's amazing. I've made a difference. But that then made me think about other differences. And I'll just use two examples from last week. Last year, I worked on a charity volunteer program. One of my fellow workers was a person that had just left university, just graduated. She was fantastic. We got on really well together. She was brilliant to work with. I felt really comfortable. We swapped in and out roles. Sometimes she'd take the lead, sometimes I'd take the lead. And she was just lovely to work with. And I said to her, if you ever need a reference, just ask me, because I know when you're first starting out, it's difficult to get a reference because you haven't got, an ex-employee to follow. She couldn't get a job, so she went off and did another course. Well, the end of last week, I got a WhatsApp message for her saying, oh, Ed, is it still okay to get a reference from you? And then the following day, I got an email from the employer saying, can we have a reference for her? So there's a small difference I made in someone's life just by saying, if you want one, I'll provide you with a reference, knowing that you'd struggle to find people. And then the other thing was when I was running after Thursday's Wisdoms, I was running along and I had a close encounter of the nasty kind with a dog. And the dog owner got, and nothing untoward happened. I'm quite good at dealing with dogs. I love dogs, and I know, you know, if they're aggressive, it's not their fault really. And the lady got control of her dog, and she was very apologetic, and she was very upset. And she said to me, she said, "Oh, my dog doesn't like high-vis jackets." Now, I could have got very upset, and I could have moaned it. I could have said, "Keep your dog under control. You know, I don't like having these snarling monsters coming." But I thought, no. And I just said, it's interesting, isn't it? A lot of dogs don't like people in high-vis jackets. And I immediately saw her tension go, and she felt better. And I thought, there's a little small thing. By choosing to say something constructive rather than destructive, I'd made someone feel a little bit better. And I think we can all do that throughout our day, choose to do one thing rather than another. And if we focus on making people feel better, then the world will be a better place. So that was my thoughts on different makers. Big differences: national radio campaign withdrawn, little difference, a lady feeling a little bit better about her dog having a go at me.
Great, thanks, Ed. Yeah, and I think it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, you talk about 6 degrees of separation. You know, all of us can probably contact our president or prime minister's office with a little bit of thought and finding out who's connected to who, because at the end of the day, we're all pretty closely connected one way or another. So it's interesting that one can do that. I must admit, I don't know of anybody who's achieved that in this country, but maybe somebody has, and maybe that's Vinay. I don't know. Vinay, have you ever contacted the president's office?
No, I would have to be corrupt to do that. But oh, sorry, I'll take that back. No, I like our current president. I really had a problem with this topic because I believe that good deeds, although you do it also to feel good about yourself, it's not something I've ever sort of run around at, you know, publishing or bragging about. So, but probably the biggest difference that I believe I made in people's lives is there's somebody brought to my attention a squatter camp in Krugersdorp, and there's probably about 100 people there. Went through to visit them to see what it was like. And they don't get any funding from government or the lotto because it's purely a white squatter camp. There are no blacks there. And they've really battled to actually get support for themselves. And they've got a little aftercare centre that they've set up for the kids. And it's not really a formalised thing. Sort of just the kids go to one place. And they were having a problem feeding these children when they got home from school. So we arranged that once a week I'd go through and drop some food with them, and, you know, stuff that would last the whole week that they could make for the kids' lunch. And it really, to see the joy on the children's faces when I would arrive, they were so keen to come out and help. And eventually I got our gardeners here at the complex, and we went and we dug up a nice vegetable garden for them, got some shade cloth, bought some seeds, and the kids were so enthusiastic to actually get involved and plant this vegetable garden and look after it. And it was incredibly rewarding. It really, really was. And it's now self-sustaining. I registered them as a non-profit organization and got them a fundraising number, got the aftercare registered, and it was a lot of work to do all that red tape, but we eventually got there, and they're now self-sustaining. I no longer go through once a week and deliver food. They actually get food delivered to them. Somebody goes through and collects it, and I do some CSR, you know, corporate social investment projects for some of my clients, and they can be very rewarding. But the one thing that I try and really engender in people is that you must be able to walk away from the project and it must carry on. It must never become a situation where ever your CSI is totally dependent on you. You must get them to a level where they can, where the organization or the group of people can actually carry on themselves, and then you've truly made a difference. And yeah, that's my story. I thought it was very rewarding for me.
It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's fantastic, and I wish there were a lot more sort of NGO, NPO type focused operations that drove towards sustainability, because I think too many of them depend on funding for their own survival, and therefore there's a self-perpetuating cycle of non-sustainability in those environments. So I think that's absolutely superb. So well done with that. I wish, as I say, I wish there were more folk doing those kinds of things with that kind of focus, because I think that's absolutely what is required. So great stuff. So Jasper, let's come across to you next.
Hi. Yes, I think the word difference maker is then that two-edged sword to say, as you then, you'll certainly have people or instances where you made a difference in other people, but then you also have been touched by people making a difference in your life. So maybe I want to start by saying that in my new life journey, which we are still busy traveling, but there was a period around the 1990s to about the 2000s where I was very, very involved in building it in multi countries. But what led me to get to a point where I could make it my career was the impact of three gentlemen over a period of time leading up to 1990. So from call it 1981 to 1990, these gentlemen living in different parts of South Africa, but each in the way he conducted himself and his view of the world and his ability to somehow paint a vision and encourage you in passing, not necessarily taking a specific interest in you. So I have had three such gentlemen that I just wrote their names down. So I think often we don't know what we even do in passing, or we've just done it anyway as part of our job description as a CEO of a company or as a leader of a thing. But people look up to you and they take value out of those words, and it has an impact on people's lives. And then a big influence in my life was in 2005 when I was introduced to the ICCC and meeting some of the leaders of that time and seeing a combination of very successful people, but at the same time endowed with such humility that it almost oozed out of them. And coming out of the corporate world where people had these big egos and it's all about the me, my, and I, and then find people that are also successful, but with none of these obnoxious traits. That was a huge inspiration for me. And then I have the privilege, and I think it's a blessing when in your lifetime you don't necessarily set out to say, I'm going to help A and now I'm expecting a reward from person A to thank me profusely for what I've done for him, because I think there's no value in that. But I remember 2 years ago when we were at an event, a national event for New Life. And at that event, about 3 or 4 of my old leaders that I worked very intensely with in the various countries like Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and we were together at this event, and each one in his own right having qualified to be there. But then just to know how their lives have changed for the positive since I met them the first time, and how because of the focus that I put on that this whole multi-level marketing thing is just an income stream, but it's how you then deploy the capital and how you make it work for you. So each of these people have gone on and became very, very successful entrepreneurs in their country. One guy went and he built in Rwanda, built a 6-story office building in the the capital on the highway. And I've been in Rwanda and I've seen it. Another guy went on and he became a property developer in Kenya, developing flats and things like that. And another lady, she still built a massive team, and her husband passed on, but now she and her daughter carries on, and they now the leaders of that country. But it was just rewarding to know that at the time when you met them, you could not have foreseen that these people would move on and becoming so successful. And then in GIG, the other thing that I've been involved in since 2008, it's again just the system that one provides that gives a nurturing environment. But and some, you know, it's there for everybody, but it's a few people who actually make use of it and move on. And then last night in our every Sunday night from 7 to 8, I have a GIG webinar where we do some activities and training. But then this lady, Sarah, and I think you know Sarah on this platform, but she was just saying how much of a difference it made for her to become involved with us in GIG, and because of the work we do with couples to then take them through their how do you see your future unfold and next 12-month action plan and what are you going to do about it. At the time that I then met her and her husband, they were in dire straits financially with lots of debts, but she put a plan in action. She started to work on that, and last night she shared that during this past week she finished her second last debt and only one more debt to go. You know, that kind of is a great reward to know that, you know, some people benefit from the training and the teaching. And I think in the last, and some of you might know him, Andre the cyclist who stayed with us. My wife, I'm actually now telling the story on behalf of her. She has a heart as big as a, what do you call it, just for stragglers and strangers. And so Andre is a cyclist, and he was diagnosed many years ago with HIV positive, and then dedicated his life to just see what he can do to be an AIDS activist and raise money for awareness on AIDS. And he got a cycle and he started cycling around the country and do talks and stuff like that. And at the funeral, it came out, and he passed on 2 weeks ago. And we had a memorial last Monday. And at the funeral, it came out that during his time, he probably raised 50 million plus, 50 million plus, just on various attempt records and stuff that he did that created the awareness and advertisement. But my wife knew of him and supported him for the last 10 years, but the last 3 years we've actively supported him on a full-time basis, with him staying here at no cost. And then he passed on. At the funeral, we were just so fortunate, or just so grateful, that we could at least give him dignity in his last few years. And it came out from several people how he's, you know, how it was appreciated. So I think don't know who said it. I think Renee said it with the Krugersdorp example, and Edward said it with just not being aggressive with the lady. It's those small things that on the spur of the moment that you do that, but who knows? It could have eternity reverberations in how it's passed on from that person to other people. So yes, that's my contribution.
Great, thanks, Jasper. Yeah, it's interesting how our lives are touched by people, and we touch other lives, and until you actually sit down and think about it, it takes a little bit of effort sometimes to really remember these things and realize that you have made such a difference. So that's great. Thank you. All right, Trevor, let's get across to you.
Yep. So I think everyone makes a difference, and no matter how small, whether positive or negative, just by what it is that you do and what people take away. So in the past, I've told people about what we did here in Lone Hill when my neighbor was taken out by an AK-47. I perhaps haven't told people about what we did with the shopping center when we had problem landlords that couldn't care two hoots for the community. Well, they're no longer around, so I won't go much deeper into that story. You know, I just think I've been here for 30 odd years in my own home, and we've always had what has been called domestic quarters here in South African parlance. I've always been amazed by individuals who actually charge for the use of those domestic quarters. So we as a family have never done that. And as a result, we've had domestics here with us for almost 30 odd years. And when I think back on that, 30 years of savings of what most are investing to a roof over their head is a substantial amount of money. So one of the things that I'd just like to share is if you own a home somewhere and you've got spare space and you can put up a family or two, do it. Then the other thing that I thought to share was about 6 weeks ago, and this is quite personal, I dragged myself out of the home because I am reclusive, so I love this lockdown, and decided, okay, let's take a mask and let's go off to the gym and see if we can get a lane. I had to move Jasper out because I discovered he was in the way at the change room. And I took my granddaughter along, and she has just turned 12 years old. And you know, some of you know that I'm a swimmer, so it's very difficult for a swimmer to watch a non-swimmer in action. And I only started swimming when I was 12. If I think about it, up until that time, I was just playing in water like most other people play in water. And then I started learning to swim at 12. So I thought, you know what, I will only push this little one when she hits 12. So I took her along to the gym with me. And it was quite interesting. She couldn't swim 6 strokes. I tried to get her to turn her arms over. Now, if anyone knows how I turn my arms over, it's very difficult to watch. And I just thought, my goodness, I think I'm going to buy some running shoes for her. But about 8 sessions later, because we've been sort of going there slowly but surely, went from twice a week to 3 times a week. I'm now back up to 1,000 a session. It took me a while to get back into swimming some distance. And she last Friday, which for me is amazing. And I know what happened to myself when someone turned around and said, hey, off you go and do your first 20 odd meters. We had 20-meter pools then, which became 25 meters, then became 50 meters. And then we were doing 3 to 5 kilometers in training about when I was 15, 16, 17. And that could happen to this little one. And I thought, she doesn't know it. I don't know it, whether she'll ever remember this little episode. But in my mind, this could be a little difference-making feature of my patience. And I must say, when I saw her taking those first 5, 6, my patience levels were that low. I was going to call Vernay and say, Vernay, do me a favor. Come and look after my granddaughter for me. But I'm actually quite chuffed now with what she's doing. And very soon she'll do a grand. I can see that at the moment. So I'm reminded of, Ed turned around and said the Difference Maker program is what stimulated him, or talk about the Difference Maker program. One of the first pictures we have in the Difference Maker program is of a grandpa with a hat on, with his little kid on, and the impact of this little grandkid looking at his grandpa. And then we have another one of another little kid copying someone that he was watching, and I think it's in Berlin. You can remind me of that particular picture. So we never ever know what it is that we do as role models, whether good or bad, that is actually making a difference in someone's life. And that was the impact of the Difference Maker program. And I think on top of that, what we're trying to do at the moment is taking all of this information that is high value, high priced information out into corporates, and we've dropped it down to $1 a month to see if we can impact as many people as we can around the world. Now, it is self-serving because we'd like to do $1 a month times 1 million people out of 7.5 odd billion people. But imagine if the income that you get from 1 million people at $1 a month, the amount of difference making that one could do in the world with that type of income. So I love business, and that's always at the top of my mind. And I think the little things that you do affect other people, whether good or bad.
Thanks, Trevor. Yeah, I still remember when Taylor was first presented to you, and a year or two after that, we were chatting, and you said, you'd asked God to give you patience, and you talked about your patience now with the swimming things, and yeah, you got delivered a granddaughter that you needed to look after full time, and that was your answer to your request of needing patience. So yeah, you got to keep on persisting with that one.
Thank you very much. No more. I'm not into patience.
Right. Okay, Donovan, you came in a bit late, but I'm sure you got the gist of what we're on, and so welcome.
Yes, morning. Thanks, Ivan. Morning, everyone. Yeah, I think I mentioned it before. Me and my wife, we used to do community outreach programs whereby we offered health and wellness services. I think the last one, we used a public space. We gathered together a few nurses and doctor volunteers and also pharmaceuticals. And then we sponsored the whole event. We bought all the consumables, the testing kits, etc. And then we offered free counseling and testing services to the public. So as people walk past, we just grab them, did the counseling and testing. And I think we reached just over 200 people that day. So we were planning to do it bigger and better by getting a mobile unit, etc. I'm sure, when we have the resources, we'll be able to do that. So hope we made some sort of difference in people's lives. And something interesting, just before I switched on the news, they mentioned this incident that happened with a Formula One race. Apparently the doctor that assisted the driver, he's a South African, all the way from South Africa, and I'm sure he made a difference during that incident. So wherever you are, no matter how big or small, we can all make a difference. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Donovan. Yeah, and I'm sure you did make a difference in those people's lives. So that's great stuff. I think Cecile is tied up in electrical cables or something, so I'm not sure that she's going to be able to have a chat. So yeah, let me just wrap up with my little story. I think, like Renee, I struggle to think of something that I could actually chat about, and then I went back to it was around about 2000 as well. My elder daughter, who had Down syndrome, had just started at a special needs school. She'd been there for a year or so, and we'd been looking at the situation there, and weren't particularly happy with the way the school was operating and the way things were working, and in fact the way it was being run, and it was one of the better ones that we actually were able to find in and around our area here. And so I'd started engaging with some of the other parents and some of the board members, and they'd asked me to come onto the board, and I said to them, unfortunately at this stage of the game with the current chairperson, I'm not prepared to actually get onto the board, because I don't think it's being run properly. So if you want me on the board, you're gonna have to make me the chairperson, which which they duly did the following year. So, and then I spent 8 years on that governing body as the chairperson, and we completely restructured the way the school operated. We got a principal that was really focused on on what I believe to be the right methodologies and principles and philosophies around special needs education, and it's an extremely difficult environment to operate in, because you've got to keep the classes very small, which makes the finances quite complex, makes it difficult to be viable. Viability, you spoke about sustainability, extremely difficult in those environments as well. I think ultimately, we made quite a difference to quite a few students' lives, and hopefully some of the teachers. I mean, teachers in those environments generally are extremely special people themselves. I think you have to be to work every day in an environment like that. It's not an easy environment to work in, and it takes a special heart and a special kind of individual to be able to do that kind of work. We tried extremely hard for the period that I was involved in there to upgrade the environment, upgrade the teachers' salaries, because they weren't paid particularly well because of the challenges in that environment. And we did make a fair amount of headway, and they were on a rented property, and over that period I managed to negotiate a deal with a developer to buy that property and actually get us a piece of land for redevelopment of the school. And I think at the end of my tenure there, I hope I made a bit of a difference, and I certainly think we did. It still remains an environment that is extremely difficult to sustain, and they have unfortunately been through some wobbles since I left. But I just hope that the period that I was there, we did actually make an impact, and at least set some of the right things on their path. That's my little story. I think that's Cecile, as I say, I think is probably still tied up with her electrician. So anybody got a suggestion for a topic tomorrow? Trevor?
Do me a favor, I'm trying not to think over this shutdown period. There you go, Ed.
Ed, you got another one for us. Good.
I'll go for 3 in a row. I think before I've told a story about something I learned at school at a speech day that's carried through all my life. So I wondered whether there was anything that people learned either at school or maybe when in their childhood, some little saying, some little example that has carried them through the rest of their life. Would that be a good topic to discuss?
Yeah, okay. I didn't learn anything at school, but we can certainly try. I mean, I wasn't much of a student myself, although
I don't mean from formal lessons. I mean perhaps something that someone said at a speech day, or something that came out of a discussion, or something that happened where your granddad said something.
100%, yeah. No, that's great. So again, I think it sort of ties in with the theme a little bit, doesn't it? How someone maybe made a difference in your life through just a simple statement. But so let's pick up on that one. So great, folks. Have a fantastic day further. We'll see you on the morrow. And if you can join us for the UK Wisdom Summit, 12 o'clock South African time. We hope you can. We'll see you then. Otherwise, have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow. Cheers now.